Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Technical Critic, and while I'm still mourning the loss of Mr. Pinette, I did promise that I would watch Game of Thrones seasons 1 through 3 before April 6th, in order to properly review and critique season 4, episode 1. And I have done so, and work must go on, and hopefully this will help you with the process. So let's begin. I was not able to do reviews for each show individually, so I'm just going to review them as a whole here. Looking through the series, I have to say this. The Starks, who seem to be the main storyline of Game of Thrones, they seem to be mostly sword fodder, and I know that there's lots of people who are going to disagree with me heavily on that, but just hear me out. Starting from the death of Robert Baratheon, and moving forward to the death of Ned Stark, his wife and son, the death of many of their bannermen, the knight who served them as master at arms, and even with Sansa and Arya being put in so much danger, they really only exist for bad things to happen to. Even Jon Snow, at the end of season 3, he had 3 arrows put into him, and he was literally dragged back to Castle Black almost dead. Pretty much dead. And even through his time in the North, heavy violence to him. So really, the case for them existing in this world simply to be cut down is a pretty good one. Even if you look at the 2 farm boys who were slain and burned and even the death of Master Pycelle, slain and burned I suppose you would say in their place. Even though they're still alive, the violence that swirls around them is the ever-present danger. And really, if you look at any of the other houses, with probably the exception of the Targaryens, and no one else really ever dies. I mean, you see one of the Baratheons die at the hands of the ghost seed of the other Baratheon, and you see I don't think I've seen any of the main Lannisters die. Not really. I've seen a couple of minor Lannisters die, but really and truly, if you look at who's been featured heavily, none of them have gone. None of them, not too many of the people who serve them have gone. So really, you have to make the case that it's mostly the Starks. And quite frankly, it's not that interesting to just wait for Starks to die, or to be pushed to some kind of point of violence. It seems repetitive. The only storyline that I at least find very interesting, and I have to say this, while I don't care for any of the other storylines, for example, the Stark storyline or the political maneuverings of the Lannisters, or whatever the heck the Greyjoys are up to, Theon being castrated or whatever is going on with him, or the Baratheons attempting to take back a throne which really isn't theirs. While I don't care for these storylines, I do think they're interesting. They're interesting enough that they caught my attention, and I at least paid attention long enough that I could follow what's happening in the series. And while I may not be emotionally invested with those particular characters, I have followed them from the beginning to their end, and I do know what happened to them in the canon. Really the only thing, and I think this is because I'm a person of fantasy, that has been holding me is Daenerys Targaryen's storyline, and watching her go from humble slave, both of her brother and Khal Drogo, to essentially a queen with her dragons. But that being said, even as a fantasy, this cannot be defined as fantasy. This is at best pseudo-fantasy. It is a medieval political thriller. It is like the It's like the Borgias or the Tudors. It's just they've taken a fantasy element, whether it be the dragons of Daenerys or the new religion of the Baratheons, and then basically just it's not shoehorned. It's it's been woven into the story. But I honestly feel that if you were to remove those two threads, you could rework the story just by tweaking it a little bit. And I mean, you could even rework the story. You could even remove the White Walkers from the north, and you could rework the story. You would probably end up with the same thing, and you wouldn't need the mystical element in it. Now, on to season 4. Now, this season was very, very, very heavily advertised. Even all the way back in February when the first trailers were released, they were heavily advertising it on television. They were heavily advertising it on YouTube with all the different trailers that were all slightly different from each other, so you were forced to watch to see exactly what differences and try to glean those little bits of information for what was going to happen. They even had even the YouTube celebrities who watch and enjoy the show were all on Twitter. They were all going, Game of Thrones is coming back in April, all the way back in January, and well, quite frankly, there was a lot of hype, and with good reason. It's a very good show. But this opening is almost unnecessary. And I say this as someone who's watched the first 3 seasons. And it's almost as if they didn't think that the people who would watch the season would remember exactly what happened in the last one, because this basically seemed not even a recap of events, more a recap of characters. Like, we'd all forgotten who the characters were. Like, maybe we hadn't taken the time, that no one, and absolutely no one, would take the time to watch the last episode of season 3 before watching the first episode of season 4. Or that maybe everyone expected that there would be something that happened off screen in between seasons that we would have to be caught up on. But really and truly, the events that happened in this season's opener literally take place right after the end of season 3, give or take a few eventless weeks. So what do we learn really from this season? We learn that fan favorite Tyrion is still alive and kicking. We learn that Jaime Lannister is still hot for his Cersei, his sister, for those of you who don't know. We learn that Cersei is not as hot for her brother as she used to be. And it's alluded to that she may or may not have had an abortion, or at least prevented herself from having a baby. What else? We learn that Daenerys is still in Esteros and is going to go and conquer another slave city. At this point, she's conquered 3 cities. When are we going to see her go to Westeros? Are they waiting to make it, like when they say that she has to rule 7 kingdoms? Are they actually waiting for 7 seasons to make Westeros the 7th kingdom? Because if so, I don't think I'm going to stick around that long. I'll be 26 and approaching old age by the time that happens. And thank you for reminding me of my mortality. What else? You could really, let's see. Arya gets her sword back. Needle, the one that hasn't been seen for 2 seasons, in case you forgot. So we get Needle back. She's still with the Hound, and the Hound is still taking her to the Vale. Let's see. Jon Snow keeps his head, and somehow miraculously survives, having 3 arrows shot into him. I guess we can't kill dour Jon Snow just yet. What else? We learn that some of the wildlings that have come south are cannibals. Ugh, that's unnecessary. What do we really learn? We learn that Sansa is mourning for her family, which is rightfully so. And we do observe that she may, possibly, and I say this with a very strong possibly, considering how she's been used for the last 3 seasons, usually just as a set piece. She may possibly become a bigger player this season. I do hope so, because I do think that she has the potential for being an interesting character. And maybe we'll see a little bit more of that. And let's see. there's a lot of characters that we don't see. For example, Stannis Baratheon, we see nothing of him. The Red Lady, we see nothing of her. The Mountain, we see nothing of him. We only hear about him per se. Let's see. White Walkers, nothing of them. Theon Greyjoy, we assume he's still captured and castrated. I mean, it's not as if he escaped in the last few weeks. Or Reek, I believe his name is now. I assume his sister is still going to rescue him, although she probably should have gotten there by now and sprung him. Pardon the pun. Littlefinger, he's absent, of course. The Eunuch, he's absent, of course. Master Pycelle, he's absent, of course. There really is nothing else in this episode, except for one particular scene. They introduced a new family, and I do not remember their name, but I do remember their sigil. It is a sun with a spear going through it, and really I feel that this entire episode was just to set up this one particular scene early in the beginning. 12 minutes in we see breasts, and while I appreciate breasts, I don't want to have to wait an entire week to catch a glimpse of some. I mean, let's face it, this is the internet. We can see breasts whenever we want. Men, women, children, we all have access to breasts, and more power to us. All kinds of breasts, all day, every day. But that's not the point of this. What he explained is essentially why he came to King's Landing. Not just for the wedding. Essentially, his sister had been married to Rhaegar Targaryen and had had 2 children. You might remember this story, or a little bit of this story, from the previous seasons. And basically, when the Lannisters and the Baratheons decided that they wanted to destroy the old order of the Targaryens, and they finally did, they killed the Mad King, etc., and they butchered Rhaegar and all of his children, he goes into what they did to his sister, that the Mountain proceeded to rape her and then cut her in half. And it's just what you could tell. He's essentially come to avenge her against the Lannisters. And quite frankly, the way that the story is presented, you don't blame him. You sympathize with him. And as he said, make sure to tell your father the Lannisters are not the only people who pay their debts. Well, you know what? I hope he pays his debt in full. And I hope he finds the peace that he's looking for. I honestly do feel for him. And I hope to see more of him because he seems to be an extremely interesting character. But other than that, nothing in particular happened. Arya got back Needle and the horse. Sansa got a nice piece of jewelry. Daenerys Targaryen got flowers from her lover, who they changed actors, by the way. And other than that, nothing else happened. Lady Tyrell is still still going to marry Joffrey. Joffrey is still alive. Unfortunately for all those of you who want him dead. Honestly, if they had, I think, and this would have been a severe amount of fan service, but I don't care. If they had started with a picture of Joffrey's body and just zoomed off of his corpse, and then given us a 3 weeks prior, and then worked our way up to that, I think everyone would have been fine with that. No one would have cared. No one would, well, obviously they would have cared how he died. They would have been happy that he died. But instead of the great amount of apathy that we feel looking just at this name-dropping episode, I mean, literally everyone has their own 2-minute cameo, and then they're gone for the rest of the episode. That's another thing. A lot of people expected to see Joffrey die this first episode. They expected to see a lot of blood or violence or something in this first episode, and they're not the only people who are disappointed. I think across the board, everyone is underwhelmed, expecting more from the series that literally kills off people as soon as you meet them. And main characters as well. Especially the Starks, as we went over. Speaking of which, how the heck did Jon Snow heal up so fast? I mean, could we not have gotten some character development there with him healing and talking to Sam and maybe a little bit of reworking their relationship? Because Sam, as you remember, Sam saw his brother and gave him the dragon glass blades, and basically he's been talking to Jon Snow apparently for weeks now while he recovered, and never mentioned it once, at least not that we know of. I don't know. Maybe we're analyzing. There's not that much there to analyze, and maybe all of us critics are analyzing it too much. This has been my critique. I'm seriously underwhelmed. I do hope that the next episode kicks it up by several notches. Otherwise, they will be losing several hundred fans. And for a series that had so many viewers, not only on HBO, but on the internet, who watch this, so many that they crashed HBO's website. In fact, if they're going to do this, if they're going to start with lackluster episodes like this, why can't they do what Netflix or the BBC released Sherlock, all three episodes at once, essentially within a week? Netflix released Orange is the New Black all at once. Why can't HBO just release all their episodes for season 4 at once, and then just leave it up to people's discretion to watch it? No one's going to watch 24 one-hour episodes all in one sitting, with the exception perhaps of maybe me and a few other hardcore fans who really, really, really want to critique the season as fast as they can, as hard as they can. Most people are going to pace themselves so that they can, one, keep up with their friends, and two, enjoy themselves. And I honestly think, why can't HBO jump on this bandwagon? It's not like they would be losing anything. In fact, if we're able to go through the story faster, we might actually like the series and recommend it to more people, because we can get to parts that we like and then recommend those parts to other people, and they're like, oh, well, I gotta watch this to see that. Anyways, this has been my critique. Watch the show, pray for the best, because, oh man, if they continue like this, this is not going to be a good season. I expect better of them, and I know that they're probably going to deliver, and fingers crossed. So this has been my critique. I will see you later. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, God bless you. Bless you so much. Like, favorite, comment. Tell me what you liked about this video, didn't like about this video, etc. I've been your technical critic, and I will see you next week.